Hey guys, what's up? It's Becoming from Gina today. So today I'm going to be comparing the Taurus TX22 to the KelTec P17. So from the start, I just want to say something about the P17. So the P17, whenever it was first released to the first reviewer, of course everybody knows that from TFB. When people saw that, a lot of people have written off the P17 because of that review. I don't think that TFB had any ill will in their review. So I'm not saying anything about anybody on that. But I'm just saying from that review to what I have and what I've heard other reports of now, that the P17 does not line up to that first review, that it's going to be different than that. And so a lot of people wrote it off for that, and a lot of people may think, well, this is a complete waste of time. Why would you even compare that piece of junk to the TX22? Well, you're thinking about it in terms of that initial review, and my experience with it has been totally different than that. Okay, so in the TX22, I don't know how many rounds I have. It's somewhere probably between 4,000 and 5,000 rounds. On the P17, I have about 1,700 rounds, and it's been in multiple range trips, at least 5 range trips. So I've had a lot of different occasions to test it out. Been out whenever it's warm, but been out whenever it's been pretty cold, below freezing. Okay, as always in my versus videos, I'll tell you where the TX22 is better, then I'll tell you where the P17 is better, and then I'll just kind of give a list of stuff where they're just kind of the same across the board. Okay, so just jumping into it here. So on the TX22, and of course we're clear here, and we're clear here. So on the TX22, I prefer the trigger reset and pretty muchly the trigger pull on the TX22. So there is a little bit of mush to pull through, but once it breaks and then back to reset, very short, and I can feel it very, very cleanly. It's a very tactile reset, and then back to break. So watch how short. On the P17, got to go that far to the reset, and it's just a very, very minute little click you can feel whenever it resets. It's very quiet, and I can barely feel it. And so my problem with that is, and it's just a training issue, but it's a problem I have. Whenever I'm shooting with the P17, especially whenever I'm switching back and forth of these, testing them out, is sometimes I can't feel that reset very good at all. I can't hear it, can't feel it. So I just kind of get to where I think I've hit the reset, and then I go to pull the trigger, and every once in a while, I thought I've reset, but it hasn't gone out far enough, and I go to pull it, and it's dead. Okay, another reason why I think the TX22 is better is that it's just made from higher quality polymer, and there's really not, I mean, there's no question about that. When you pick up the TX22 and you just feel this polymer, you can tell how thick it feels. It just feels of high quality when you grab it, and I mean, if you just squeeze as hard as you can, you feel like it's not going to flex at all. You just feel like it's just hard, rigid. But it feels good, and it just feels of very, very high quality. On the P17, and I mean, that's part of KelTec's deal, is this is an ultra affordable handgun, and so that's part of their deal. But the polymer on this, when you squeeze it really hard, you can feel it flexing, and you can tell it's just thinner and just not high as quality. And just overall, the TX22 is just finished off better. There's a little mold seam right here, but barely. I mean, you can barely feel it. Everything is very smooth. It's just finished very, very nicely. And of course, like I said, I've got a bunch of rounds and I've carried mine to the range a bunch. So I've got dings and scratches, but it's just a good, high quality feel. On the KelTec, where the two halves come together here, you can definitely tell the seam. And it's just, you can just tell it's not as refined as the TX22 at all. Okay, so the TX22 obviously has proved itself to me over way more rounds than the P17, but for me, the TX22 has been slightly more reliable than the P17. I can shoot nearly any type of ammo through the TX22, and it never gives me a problem. Occasionally, M22, it does not like, but it happens every once in a while whenever I shoot with that. So the TX22, I mean, I have run it through absolutely everything from subsonic stuff all the way up to hypervelocity, stinger, and all that. It just runs everything like a champ. The P17 has been very reliable. It has liked Remington Golden Bullet. Okay, shooting some Golden Bullet now. I've shot a lot of that. I've shot Winchester white box. It loves that. It shoots that just fine, no problems.
Yeah, on this one, Winchester white box, shoot one mag of this.
Shoots mini mag, and everything else that I've shot through it, all the way down to subsonic stuff.
I'm gonna shoot 14 rounds of the Aguila Sniper subsonic 60 grain stuff, 950 feet per second. Okay, that cycled it just fine.
Standard velocity stuff, and then the hyper velocity stinger and velocitor, all of that, it likes it. So the P17 for me has been reliable, and those are the reports I've been hearing from other people. But the thing about the P17 is there is a couple of ammunition types that I've found that it does not like. M22, and I've tried different lot numbers, and it's happened the same on it. And auto match, I only had auto match the one time, didn't get a different lot number on the auto match, but with M22 and auto match, it does not like it. And it's not like on the TX22. On the TX22, on the M22, maybe once every 2 or 3 mags, it may give me a problem. On the KelTec, I have figured out whenever it does not like something, you will know it real quick. Because on the M22, the first time I tried to shoot it, every round it stovepiped. Every single round it stovepiped. And then with the auto match, it did the same thing. It stovepiped a bunch. It would run a few rounds, but then it would stovepipe. And it's just obvious what it does not like. Now, there's tons of stuff that it has liked, and even cheap bulk stuff. Okay, on the TX22, I just prefer the overall ergonomics. So, like on the TX22, and it is a bigger frame gun, but to me, whenever I grab it, it nearly feels like it was made perfectly for my hand, and that's the way I hear a lot of people describe it. It just fits. I mean, everything with the way the undercut is here, with this, with the way it swells out right here, everything just feels perfect. And the stippling on it, I love the stippling. To me, it just fits perfectly. The KelTec, when I first saw it in pictures, I thought, no way. But since I've gotten it, I actually do like the ergonomics. It fits my hand pretty good, but it would just have to be absolutely stellar for it to be better than the TX22. And so you can tell that the Taurus is definitely wider in the grip than in the KelTec. It's pretty narrow here. Taurus is a lot bigger, and it swells out basically to fill up your palm. Trigger guard is just a little bit bigger on the TX22 than on the KelTec. There's been several occasions when I've gone out with the P17 that I've had the TX22 with me, and I'll show a range video of all this, but whenever I set down the P17, I pick up the TX22 and going back and forth. As I go to shoot with the TX22, it just points more naturally for me. Just whenever I bring it up, I just feel like it's closer to what it needs to be. And maybe it's just because I've practiced so much more with it, but it just feels just totally natural for me to pull up and to just get right on target. So as far as the accuracy goes, they're both right in there at the same place. I've shot several groups with them. I'll show you at least one here, and at 8 or 9 yards, somewhere around there, they printed nearly exactly the same type of group. So for accuracy, they're going to be right in the same ballpark. Okay, some areas where the P17 for me is better. So one thing is that it comes with 3 mags where the TX22 only comes with 2 mags. Okay, so overall on the TX22, I just prefer the trigger on it. But what needs to be said is that the P17 actually has a lighter trigger. TX22 has right at a 4-pound trigger. And the KelTec has just a little over a 2-pound trigger. 2 pound, 2 ounces. Most of the time it pulls about 2 pounds, 4 ounces. So The trigger is definitely lighter. At least on mine, between my two copies here, at least 1.5 pounds lighter. Okay, another huge thing where the P17 is going for, and this is really the market that it's going after, is KelTec's deal here, is its price. The MSRP on it is $199, where the MSRP on the TX22, I don't even remember if it's $299 or somewhere around there, $329, something like that. But the MSRP on this is $199, and of course right now we're mid-February. They're still barely making any of these right now, so they're hard to get. They're higher than what they're normally going to be. But in a year or so, whenever the supply catches up to the demand, that's going to go below the MSRP, and you're probably going to be able to get the P17 anywhere from $50 to $75, maybe even $100 cheaper than you can the TX22. Okay, on the KelTec, it has blacked out rear and it has fiber optic front. And then on the TX22, it's got 3 dot sights, of course, 2 dots in the front, 1 dot in the front. And I prefer the sights on the P17. I like the blacked out with the green fiber. Okay, one thing that's definitely better on the P17 is how smooth the slide is. It is just incredibly smooth. I don't know, it's very, very easy to rack, and it's just so smooth. I definitely prefer that. On the TX22, it takes a lot more force, and with the recoil spring, with the metal flat spring on the inner polymer body of the recoil spring, it just feels a little bit gritty, and my TX22 is still a little bit dirty also, but it just feels kind of gritty on that. The P17 is just ultra smooth. It's like glass. Okay, so some things that are just the same between them is they both have 16 round mag capacity. That is awesome. Both of them hold 16 rounds. And to me, that's one of the great things about the P17. It just is cheap, nothing to it mag. I mean, it's like there's nothing to this, and they make it work. It feeds great. The TX22 mag feeds great also, but KelTec and Taurus have figured out how to make a 16 round mag that just works, and there's nothing to it really. Okay, so then the one kind of different thing obviously about the P17 is the way this slide is. So the slide is this right here. And so you can see definitely different. It does not have sides to it. This right here is not for mounting optics or anything. This is just a plastic piece that bolts onto this steel. It's basically used for a charging handle and to house the rear sight there. So there's two things about that then, with the slides being like that. Obviously when you're shooting, the side is not moving, so you can put your thumb up pretty high on that and really stabilize it. That may be a bad training thing, but you can do that. And then the other thing is obviously there's no front serrations because there's nothing there. I mean, there's no slide there, so you can't grab it from the front and check anything. So got to run that from the rear unless you want to grab the side or something like that, which that's putting your finger really close to the muzzle, so that's probably a no-go. The TX22 just has a standard kind of slide here. It's all aluminum, where that is a steel piece. This is aluminum, kind of has a matte finish here. So on the P17, the slide stop is right here. It's just this one little piece. You pull the slide back and push that up and it catches it. On the TX22, I can just grab on the front serrations here and stop the slide right there. Okay, both of these have adjustable rear sights for windage and elevation. On the TX22, both of the windage and elevation, they're both right there. On the P17, this is your windage, and then that set screw right there is your elevation. Okay, and so you can see the TX22 is definitely bigger. The frame goes longer there than the grip. The slide is longer, the barrel is longer. So the TX22 is just, overall, it's a lot bigger. It's like a full-size handgun, where the P17 is kind of an in-between, and so it's, it's a little bit smaller, but it's still pretty good size though. Okay, another area where I prefer the TX22 is in the mag release, because it's just a standard mag release that I'm used to on all the other pistols that I shoot, so it just makes more sense for me. On the KelTec, it's got this paddle release, which is good because it's ambidextrous, but it's just not natural for me. This is good. I'm not complaining about it. It's good. It works just fine. It's just not what I'm used to. Safety is ambidextrous on both of these. Okay, on the P17, it is hammer fired, and on the TX22, there's no hammer here. It is a true striker. Big thing between these two is that they both come with threaded barrels standard. You can get TX22s without threaded barrels. On the KelTec, I don't think you can at this point, maybe at some point in the future. But they all come with threaded barrels, and to me that is a big selling point.
Shoot some AR tactical here. All right, in the mag through the KelTec P17 of AR and CCR tactical.
Okay, the Taurus with an empty mag and the thread adapter is 17.75 ounces. The KelTec with the empty mag with the thread adapter is 13 ounces even. Now, one thing that the TX22 has taken some criticism for, and justly, because I had the problem, is that on some of the earlier models, which actually I think it extends to even a lot newer ones, but they've had quality issues with their barrels. And so what I thought I would do is just get some close-up video of the rifling. So I'm going to show that to you real quick. So I'll start off by showing you the TX22, and you'll be able to see the pitting in the bore of the barrel. You can see the chatter marks in the rifling, and you can just see that it's got issues. Okay, so in the P17, as I videoed that, it's a consistent texture on the rifling, but there's like texture in the rifling or something, and so you'll be able to see that here. And then just as a point of reference, I'm also going to show you the rifling on my new Glock 44 and the inside of its bore, and by comparison it looks really good compared to the other two for sure. Okay, the takedown on both of them is very easy. So on the P17, you don't have to pull the trigger or anything. You just pull it back far enough, then you pull these tabs down, and then you just keep pulling it back, and then it lets it slip off just like that. I've got a video on taking this bolt apart. You can watch that. Here, to get the barrel out and all this other stuff, you're going to have to take the two halves apart, so that is going to be a pretty good chore there. On the TX22, same thing. So you pull the trigger, pull the slide back just a little bit, pull the takedown lever down, this comes off. Then your recoil spring, guide rod, and your barrel come out just like that and brings it down to the slide. Okay, so here's one difference that's a thing for me. So on the P17, you can take it down to this point and you can get to the barrel okay right there, but it's fixed in the frame. It's going to take some work to get that out. On the TX22, the barrel just comes free like this, and I can get to it and I can clean it, I can inspect it a whole lot better. And on top of that, I can clean up underneath here and everything and get to everything a lot easier as this comes apart. The P17 has this minimalist slide right here, and this is actually steel. So the TX22 has this full slide, and it's made out of aluminum, so it's a metal slide, so that's good. Okay, so another thing, whenever I'm running with my suppressor on here, on the TX22, it has just this really small ejection port right there. And so when you shoot with the suppressor, it puts back pressure back, and it kicks just debris back. And on the TX22, the slide is reciprocating, the stuff is coming out the ejection port, but it's so small here that when I'm shooting, I really can't feel it very much at all. On the P17, so here you can see all the way through the slide there. There's nothing protecting it over here, and it's just completely open on both sides. So whenever I'm running my suppressor on this, there's stuff just coming back at my face like crazy, and I can feel way more stuff coming back towards my face on the P17. Okay, so just kind of in my overall opinion here, I like both of these, I really do, and both of them are good. There's no doubt about that. But I usually don't do this, but I'm going to say it on this one. So I just got thinking, well, if I was going to a match where there was $1,000 on the line, and for whatever reason the only two guns I could choose is a P17 or a TX22, I'm going to take the TX22. It's just higher quality. I just feel like it's a slightly more reliable, and it just fits my hand better. The trigger for me is better overall. It's better. It just points more naturally for me. I like the TX22. But the P17 is good. And again, when people actually get these and people get them in a good number, get them and people try them, they're going to see that they are good handguns. This is B coming in from GNA today. Thanks for watching.